Open source has caught up again. We have a new #1 open source model, and get this, it's as good or even better than the top closed models out there, including Gemini 3 or Opus 4.5 or GPT 5.2. That's pretty insane. So this model is called Kimi K2.5, and in this video I'm going to go over all the cool things that it can do, plus of course, we're going to go over specs and benchmarks and how you can use it. Let's jump right in. Thanks to HubSpot for sponsoring this video. First of all, this is an open source multimodal model. So not only can it understand text, but you can also upload images and documents for it to analyze and understand. I'll go over the specs and benchmarks in a second, but first of all, let's go over some insane examples. You can currently use this for free on Kimi.com, which I'll link to in the description below. And then in this model dropdown, we have Kimi K2 Instant, which responds a lot faster, but it doesn't think as much, so you'll use this for like simpler tasks, whereas for Kimi K2 Thinking, this allows it to think for longer and handle more complex or multi-step reasoning questions. And then we also have Kimi K2 Agent, which autonomously helps you analyze or create assets such as websites or slides, reports, etc. And then we also have this crazy agent swarm, which I'll talk about in a second. Let's try a quick one first with Kimi K2 Thinking, and because it has multimodal abilities, I'm going to upload this image. Now, if you have no idea what this is, it's basically a visual puzzle. If you stare at it for long enough, you'll need to cross your eyes or basically blur your vision. Eventually, you'll see another object pop up. If you don't want me to spoil the answer, pause the video now and stare at it till you figure this out. I'm going to drag and drop this image onto Kimi K2, and then let's write, this is a stereogram. Identify the hidden object. Let's press run. Alright, so it's proceeding to extract the hidden object. You can expand its thinking process over here. So it needs to either try to view it stereoscopically if vision capabilities allow. If not, then it's going to use some image processing techniques to extract the stereo disparity and reconstruct the depth map. Or, this is pretty sneaky, but if that doesn't work, it'll proceed to actually search for this specific stereogram on the web. Let's hope it doesn't get to this step, because that's cheating. Anyways, if we scroll down, here it is actually using some Python code to analyze the depth information of this. So if I click on it to expand what it's doing, it's actually autonomously coding up some Python code to analyze this image. And then it's trying to analyze the repeating pattern to find some stereo disparity. So it has plotted this autocorrelation graph out, and then it's trying to reconstruct the depth map using this code. So here is what it got, which doesn't seem to be correct. So next, it's trying a different approach. Here, it's trying to use this raw depth map, which gives us something like this. But that's also not really correct, so let's try a more robust reconstruction technique using OpenCV's stereo SGBM and better pre-processing. So here's all the code for this, and then finally, aha, it's able to generate this depth map. And finally, it has identified that the hidden object is indeed a plane. Very cool. Here's another crazy example. So if you upload this maze, let's see if Kimi K2 can figure out the shortest path from the entrance to the exit. So here the prompt is find the shortest path from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. And here is how it proceeds to do so. It's first searching for the green and red dots to find the start and end, and then it's using some algorithm, I assume, to find the shortest path through the maze, which gives us this. And then here it's giving us a clearer visualization with a green to red gradient. So I mean, there you go. In just one prompt, Kimi K2 was able to take this extremely complex maze and figure out the shortest path through the maze. And because the path is quite jumbled here, it even just autonomously added color coding to this, so it's easier for us to follow. Pretty crazy. Here I'm trying to get it to code up an Android OS simulation with a high resolution lock screen featuring a digital clock and swipe up to unlock gesture. Once unlocked, the screen should reveal a home screen with these app icons, including Chrome, Play Store, Photos, and Camera. The bottom of the screen should show a persistent navigation bar with the classic back, home, and recent buttons. Implement a functional notification shade that can be pulled down from the top to reveal buttons for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and flashlight. Let's press run. Now from just the first prompt, here is what I got. You can see the swipe up screen is just transparent, and I'm trying to click on each of these icons. None of them actually work, so let's prompt it further. Next, I wrote use actual Chrome and Play Store logos, make an interface for the phone, messages, camera, and settings page. So next it looks like this. Let's swipe up, and then the photos icon still looks pretty bad. So I also prompted it to make the photos icon better. For the photos page, add a gallery with random photos. Also make dummy pages for Chrome and Play Store. It's important to incrementally get it to add pages to each app instead of getting it to add all the pages at once. Otherwise, it's going to overwhelm it. After a few prompts, here is my result. Here is the home screen, and yes, I can swipe up to unlock this. And then if I swipe down here, it also has buttons for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and flashlights, and also a brightness slider. However, none of these work because I didn't prompt it to make these functional. And then indeed we have these 8 icons. Now, these icons look pretty bad and inconsistent, but let's click on each one. So phone looks like this. It seems like I can actually dial the numbers here. And what happens if I press call? That's pretty cool. I hope it doesn't actually call this number, but here you go. Here is a decent looking phone interface. Let's go back and then click on messages, and here are the messages. This is just a dummy page, so nothing actually works. And then we also have Chrome. This is also a dummy page, so I can't actually press enter and search for anything. And then we have photos. Indeed, it made a gallery with random photos. And then we also have Play Store. This also looks pretty good. We do have that classic blue and purple gradient, which you see in like most vibe-coded apps. Let's go back, and then for settings, this also works. For camera, this also works, so it's actually pulling up my webcam. Pretty crazy. And then for clock, that doesn't do anything because I didn't prompt it to make this page yet. But there you go. Here is a decent looking Android interface built with just a few prompts. By the way, this isn't difficult. Like, I've gotten another top open source model called GLM 4.7 to vibe code this as well. And actually, I prefer GLM's generation. It does look a bit better and it's less error prone. All right, let's step up the difficulty. Let's actually get it to code up a hand tracking game. So I'm going to make a bubble shooter game, and it's going to use my webcam for hand tracking. Player needs to pinch and pull your hand down to aim and then release to launch the bubble. Let's press run. All right, here is what I got. It is tracking my hand, and if I pinch, the circle is green, but it's not like catapulting the bubble. So actually what I need to do apparently is move my hand until it touches the bubble here and then pinch it and then squeeze and pull to launch it. But if I place the circle down here, then it's way too low. So there's some issues with the current interface. Let's prompt it further. So I wrote, it doesn't matter where I pinch, as long as I pinch, it should drag the bubble down and start aiming. And then I still had some UI issues, so I wrote remove the circle that tracks my hand. No need to show that. And then finally, here is the final version. So let's press on start game again. And now if I pinch anywhere, it's going to pinch the bubble, and you can see like I can shoot left and right like this. So let's pinch again, and then I can move my hand left and right to aim. Let's see where there is yellow. So let's aim it here. This is really hard to control. It's very janky, but I can probably prompt it further to make the aiming smoother. But there you go. Here is a functional bubble shooter game which I can control and aim with just pinching my fingers. All right, now here is what I think is an even cooler feature from Kimi, which is called Agent Swarm. This is just a research preview, but this basically allows you to use a team of up to 100 agents to carry out tasks in parallel. Here's the architecture on how it works. So you have like one main orchestrator, but this can assign tasks to different sub-agents, which can perform a ton of tasks all at once. And here are some use cases for this. For example, you can get it to identify the top 3 YouTube creators across 100 niche domains. And so this agent swarm can just assign one agent to each niche across 100 niches, and each of them can just do research in parallel. And as a result, you get your 300 YouTuber profiles across 100 niches in a matter of minutes. It's like you're controlling an army of AI agents. Or here's another example where you can get Agent Swarm to do a literature review task across 40 psychology papers. So each agent is focused on writing like certain sections of this, and then their outputs are synthesized into a huge document of 100 pages. the level of productivity from this agent swarm is just crazy. Or here's another example where you can get Agent Swarm to organize and summarize over 200 original essays and place them into 6 different topic-based folders. And it's able to do this extremely quickly because, you're deploying like 100 agents at once. So here's my own personal demo using this Agent Swarm feature. Let's say you want to scrape leads across a ton of categories. That's the perfect use case for this Agent Swarm. So here's my prompt. Find the name, email, phone, and or address of the top 20 of each of the following in California: plumbers, electricians, roofers, HVAC contractors, locksmiths, pool builders, and solar panel installers. Let's press generate and see what happens. All right, so you can see this orchestrator is now assigning an agent to find leads in each of the categories. Toby is finding plumbers for me, Max is finding electricians, Jasmine is finding roofers, and so on and so forth. So we have like 7 of these agents working in parallel, each helping me find 20 leads in a certain category. This is wild. Alright, so afterwards you can see each agent is done. So here are the top 20 plumbers in California. Here are the top 20 electricians, roofers, HVAC contractors, pool builders, solar panel installers, etc., etc. And I can click on this to view the text files from all of this. And then of course I can prompt it further to just merge everything into a spreadsheet for me. But that's a quick example of how you can use Agent Swarm to basically get an army of agents to do tasks for you in parallel. Now, the cool thing about Kimi K2 is it has agents that can autonomously do stuff for you for a ton of different formats. For example, you can get an agent to create a website or analyze or edit documents, create slides, even analyze or edit spreadsheets, and then we also have a deep research agent. For example, let's spice things up by selecting the slide agent, but instead of just prompting it to generate slides, what I'm going to do is upload this spreadsheet of some company financials. I'm just going to drag and drop this spreadsheet into here and then write, make a beautiful presentation based on this financial report. Let's press enter. All right, and here is what I got. So let's expand the thinking process. You can see it's reading my spreadsheet and pulling up these numbers, and then it's proceeding to create the actual presentation file. It's planning out the content for each slide, as you can see here. And then finally, it seems to be executing some Python code to generate professional looking images and data visualizations. And then afterwards, it's proceeding to generate these slides. And finally, here is the presentation. So if we scroll all the way down here, let's click on this to edit and download. And here is what we get. Here's the second page, executive overview. Everything looks very nice. Then we have revenue performance overview. It even graphed this out for me. And the really awesome thing about Kimi slides, if you use it on their online interface, is you can actually drag and reposition these around. If you want to manually redesign it, you can do so. Each of these components can be selected and edited further. For example, we can change up the number or the text. And then here is revenue breakdown by business segment. Again, we can edit this around further if we want. Here is operating expense analysis, and then department cost structure. Very nice. In fact, just to double check that it's not making these numbers up, let's pull up the numbers for operations. It should have 510K fixed, 390K variable, and 122K overhead. So if I pull up my table on operations, indeed, it is 510K fixed, 390K variable, and 122 overhead. The total cost is 1.02 million, and that is indeed what it gave me. It's actually using the numbers from my spreadsheet. And then next slide, here is profitability analysis, and then here is the cash flow statement, balance sheet snapshot, key performance indicators, takeaways, and next steps. So that is the presentation. As you can see, you can now easily create presentations with Kimi by just uploading your documents. You don't need to manually design or even plan out the content yourself. Or here's another example of the doc agent, where you can just upload a document and then get Kimi to add comments and revise the document for you. Now, on the topic of AI agents, this free resource called Master AI Agents, The Strategic Advantage by HubSpot will come in really handy. Inside, you'll find the AI Agents Unleashed, Playbook for Success. This playbook goes over what are AI agents and how they work, plus it goes over many use cases for AI agents that actually drive value. This includes detailed applications in marketing, sales, and operations. Finally, it also goes over some common pitfalls and how to avoid them, such as over-automation and poor implementation. In addition to this playbook, you also get access to this How to Use AI Agents checklist, which is a step-by-step guide on how to assess, implement, and integrate agents for your specific needs, as well as how to measure the results afterwards. You can access these resources completely for free using the link in the description below. This resource was made by HubSpot, the sponsor of this video. Alright, next let's get it to code some stuff. So here's a drag and drop UI builder like Figma, include snap to grid and alignment guides, include an export option to HTML. Now here's what it gave me in just one shot. Let me drag a container over to here. That works. I can also change the color of this. And then here is a button. That also works. Here is some text. So let's change the text to hello world. That also works. And then we have a heading here. This also works. Image. This also works. We also have input and then card, which just looks like this. And then we also have circle, which looks like this. Now, this is too basic, so I also prompted it to add some pre-built templates. And here's what it gave me afterwards. So now there's this new templates tab up here. So if I click into this, here's a login form, which looks like this. Very nice. Or here's a dashboard, which looks like this. In fact, let me download this code and preview it full screen. So a dashboard would look something like this. And then we also have pricing cards, which looks something like this. Let's see what this landing hero page looks like. And here's what it gave me. Again, we have the classic blue and purple gradient for vibe coded apps. If you see this gradient, chances are the app was probably coded by AI. And then we also have a profile card, which looks like this. Not too bad from just 2 prompts. Here are some of their official demos. You can see it's really good for designing and creating websites. It's especially good at front-end design. Here are some other examples for your reference. You know, the really cool thing is, because this is multimodal, you can upload a video recording of you navigating through a website. So for example, on the left is a recording of the user just scrolling through the Jesco Jets website, and then you can just plug it through Kimi to reconstruct the website. Now, of course, the visuals won't look as good as the original website because it doesn't have these assets. So for example, for the plane, it's just coding this up using basic shapes, but still, it's really impressive how it's able to get like the overall design very similar to the original website, including the animations and how things should move. Or here's another example. Let's get it to make a Trello clone. So default view is a Kanban board with multiple columns, drag and drop cards, let users color tag tasks and set priority. Here's what I got. I can drag the cards around like this, or let's move this one over here. I can also click on this and edit the color tags. So instead of red and yellow, let's set this to purple and then click on save. So now the tag is purple. But this is quite basic, so I prompted it to add additional views. Include multi-view switching, provide a single click option to toggle the same data between a Kanban board, a Gantt chart timeline, or a calendar for deadlines. All right, so finally here is what I got, and you can see it has created this very beautiful Trello board, plus we also have a timeline of the same thing, plus we also have a calendar of the same tasks. Very nice. Now here is a failed example. So I uploaded this photo and asked it to find and circle Waldo. And afterwards it pulled up some Python processing and then it said it found Waldo and it circled over here, which is completely wrong. So that's a fail. Notice that other AI models like Gemini or GPT 5.2 can do this much better. Now, finally, let me also show you an example using this deep research agent. So I'm going to paste in this pretty complex medical prompt, investigate the enzymatic deficiency of aryl sulfatase A in MLD, detail the differences between late infantile and juvenile onset, explore efficacy of hematopoietic stem cell gene therapy, and create a comparative report on current clinical trials versus palliative standards of care. Let's see what it gives me. All right, that took way longer than expected. That took like over an hour, but it was super thorough. You can see it searched for relevant information. It actually autonomously used the browser to browse the web page and parse out relevant information, and then it's searching further and using another browser. And it basically did this again and again until it found all the information it needed. And then afterwards, it proceeds to synthesize all this information into a nice report. So here are the key requirements. Here's the structure. So it's planning out how to do this. Afterwards, here is what it gave me. This is super detailed and thorough, but instead of just text, what it did was it also automatically generated an interactive report. So let's click on preview, and here's what we get. So here's an executive summary. Here is the enzymatic deficiency and molecular pathophysiology, which is indeed what I specified in the prompt. Everything is super thorough. And then here is the clinical phenotype stratification. And then here's the next slide, hematopoietic stem cell gene therapy. Everything is very nicely designed. Here's a comparative analysis of these different treatments. And then afterwards, we have regulatory and global access. Now that is just a very condensed version of its findings. If you actually look at the text report, it's a lot more thorough. So first of all, here it gives me the enzymatic deficiency and molecular physiology. This is very concise and technical and jam-packed with information, and everything contains the appropriate citation. And then afterwards, here is the second section, clinical phenotype stratification and disease progression. And then I'm just going to scroll through this really quickly, but as you can see, everything is just incredibly thorough and detailed. And then afterwards, here is hematopoietic stem cell gene therapy, and here is what it gave me. Again, just jam-packed with information. Now, I just scrolled past this in a few seconds, but this is actually a very long and detailed report. If a medical professional were to do this manually, it would take them days, if not weeks, to compile all this information and synthesize it together like this. Alright, so that sums up all the cool things you can do with Kimi K2.5. Now, to be honest, comparing this to the other top open source models out there like GLM 4.7 and DeepSeek and Minimax, I still do slightly prefer GLM 4.7. For Kimi K2.5, while it is capable at doing some really cool stuff, I find that it's a lot more error prone and I need to prompt it a lot more times compared to GLM 4.7, which just runs a lot smoother. Anyways, next, let's go over its specs and performance against other AI models. So first of all, notice that Kimi K2.5 is a mixture of experts models, so think of this as like a team of agents working together to help you solve your task. Now, the total parameter size is 1 trillion parameters, which is huge, but you're not using like all these experts at any given time. Only 32 billion of these 1 trillion parameters are active when you use it. So it's very efficient. And then the context length is 256k tokens, which is roughly 200,000 words. This is basically how much information you can fit into your prompt at once, and 256k tokens is roughly 200,000 words. This isn't particularly huge, so for example, Gemini 3 Pro has a context window of 1 million tokens, or basically around 700,000 words. Now, here are some benchmark scores comparing Kimi K2 thinking with the top closed models out there, including GPT 5.2 Extra High, this is their best model, and then Opus 4.5 Extended Thinking, again, this is Anthropic's best model, and then Gemini 3 Pro High Thinking. This is Google's flagship model. In terms of agentic benchmarks, you can see that Kimi K2 actually outperforms all the top closed models out there, which is crazy. And then for coding, here we have SweBench Verified, which tests a model's agentic coding abilities in Python, and then also SweBench Multilingual, which isn't just limited to Python, but also other coding languages. And as you can see, Kimi isn't the best, but it's pretty close to the top models out there. And then for both image and video analysis, you can see that it's extremely capable and on par with the top closed models out there. Now, those are just some of their reported benchmarks. If you look at an independent evaluator called Artificial Analysis, here is how Kimi K2.5 ranks overall. You can see it is indeed the best open source model out there. And it's only like 1 point below Gemini 3 Pro High, which is very impressive, especially if you look at the price. So this is insanely cheap at only $1.1 per million tokens on average, whereas, Gemini 3 Pro costs $4.5, GPT 5.2 costs $4.8, and then freaking Opus 4.5 costs $10. So Kimi K2 is by far the most efficient option. Now, one of the most impressive things about this, which I don't hear a lot of people talking about, is the low hallucination rate of Kimi K2.5. So here's the omniscience hallucination rate. The lower the better, and as you can see, Kimi K2.5 scores all the way down here. Now note that this doesn't mean it hallucinates 64% of the time when you use it. This is just 64% of this extremely challenging benchmark. But as you can see, GPT 5.2, which is over here, has a much higher hallucination rate. Same with Gemini 3 Pro, which is over here. So in terms of accuracy, Kimi K2.5 is actually very good. Alright, so that sums up the specs and benchmarks. Next, let's go over how you can use it. Now, you can use most of these features for free on Kimi.com, which again, I'll link to in the description below. This is a basic chatbot interface, just like ChatGPT, and here is where you can select from the different models. Here, you can choose across a ton of these agents to help you do certain tasks across different media types. Note that for these agents, you only get like a handful of tries, but it refreshes every month. And then you can also use this agent swarm feature. Again, this is where you can control up to 100 agents to carry out a task for you in parallel, but this feature does require you to upgrade to a paid plan. Specifically, you need to upgrade to either the Allegretto or the Vivace paid plan. Notice that the Moderato one does not include Agent Swarm. But guess what? I actually have a free invite code which you can use to get 3 free uses of Agent Swarm. It's only valid for the first 100 users, and it's only valid for 24 hours. So I'll link to it in the description below. Hopefully you are early enough to this video and can use the code. So that's how you can try out Kimi K2.5 for free online. But like I said at the beginning, this is actually an open source model. So they've also released Kimi K2.5 on Hugging Face for you to download and run locally if you have enough compute. Now, this is 1 trillion parameters in size, so it's massive. You're not going to be able to run this on most consumer grade hardware. For example, if I click on files and versions, you can see the total size of everything is 595 gigabytes in size. OMG. You're gonna need your own like little private data farm or maybe 2 or 3 DGX Sparks to run this locally. But here's the advantage of doing so. I mentioned this a ton of times, so I might sound like a broken record, but whenever you prompt something or send your data to a closed source AI model like GPT or Claude or Gemini, your prompts and information basically get sent to their servers for their AI models to process. So they potentially have access to all your information. This is a huge concern, especially if you're working with very sensitive or private data. If you want the intelligence of the top closed models out there, but you also care about security and data privacy, then you'll need to run an open source model locally. So that's the advantage of open source, and my hat off to the Kimi team for actually open sourcing this. They probably spent millions of dollars to train this. I mean, this is one of the most intelligent models we can have right now, and the fact that they've made it free for you to download and use is very commendable. Anyways, that sums up my review on Kimi K2.5. Let me know in the comments what you think of this, and if you've been playing around with this already, what impressive things were you able to get it to do? As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.